Welcome to our special podcast on this World AIDS Day. I'll be facilitating this wonderful conversation. My name is Relebohile Mabocha, and it is exceptionally important that you join us because we are gathering to delve into insightful conversations with distinguished panelists from the Afrocentric group. And I think this is such a good place to bring in Ntate Billy to speak a little bit more to us about Pharmacy Direct as part of the Afrocentric group. I mean, it's been mentioned twice. I'm like, how am I getting my meds through you? What's the plan here?
Okay. Pharmacy Direct, obviously, it's one of the big subsidiaries of the group. We are based in Pretoria. We have evolved over time, not only just being known as a courier pharmacy, we are now more famously known as a specialist pharmacy. And what makes us special, it's actually the integration in terms of our value chain. Just putting a prescriber who's the doctor, the patient, and also our clinicians at the center of everything, because our clinicians will obviously start with making sure that there is authorization and a seamless authorization for your chronic medication, and that you are actually taking medication which is within formulary, to also ensure that they don't actually keep you out of pocket if you are a patient, because there's a problem with medication being expensive, and then once you don't have any collaborative effort that is done by your clinicians to make sure that the patient actually gets affordable and the correct medication that is within formulary. So that assists us. And why we are saying the doctor or the prescriber is also important to this is that they know the history of the patient. It's easy for them to be able to facilitate also renewal of scripts, so that the issue of non-adherence, we can be able to take care of that, being partners around that. And one of the things also that we pride ourselves with, I mean, tapping on what my colleague Maria has said, is that our footprint nationally is in 5 provinces through our centralized chronic dispensing, medication dispensing and distribution program with the Department of Health. So what we do is that we are dispensing medication in KZN, Northwest, Northern Cape, Limpopo, and Gauteng. And what is important in terms of this program is the patient journey that we have. Because before we can onboard you into Pharmacy Direct, you must have been stable for 6 months. And because we work with the prescriber will then refer you to us. What we will do, we will obviously take you through the eligibility criteria, which means that now we can be able to see that you've been stable, under which formulary you've been taking, and therefore we will ask for your consent to be able to onboard you into Pharmacy Direct. Also ask you to choose a pickup point. And a pickup point can also be an address, because my colleague has already said we reach even far remote areas. The famous address in our books actually is, my house is under the first baobab tree next to a church. So it shows you that we can reach any other place in South Africa.
And that's exactly what I was going to ask, is sometimes when we have conversations like this of deliveries, it seems like it's exclusive for middle and upper class. But for you to say you're able to reach all places where there's no way you're putting in your navigation. You're going to say, or left, or right, and then you're able to get there. So I'm curious then, because you have patients that you cater to that are under private care, those that are managed under AFA. But we know that in South Africa we have, looking at the statistics, how many actually have private cover. So how is Pharmacy Direct working in partnership with others to make everything still accessible, like chronic medication, for example, and HIV management medication, to those that don't have private healthcare access?
Yes, as I've already alluded, the CCMDD program that I spoke about, it's in partnership with government.
Wait, CCMDD program, remind us what that stands for again.
I've already said it. It's a centralized chronic medicines dispensing and distribution program.
There we go. Yes.
So what we do in terms of that is that we make sure that even those, the poorest of the poorest, that obviously cannot afford private medication, they can be able to access this medication. Like I said, it's 5 provinces, and there we've got almost about 40 pharmacists that will obviously make sure that it's a correct formulary, because just because people don't have money does not mean that they don't deserve correct medication. So that's why PD is very integral to this value chain, to make sure that we support also our sister companies, to make sure that we can reduce the impact of the disease, the prevalence. I mean, yesterday I saw on the news about the 2022 HSRC report that was talking about 8 million affected people in terms of HIV. And now that we've got almost about 1.7 active HIV patients that are taking medication on our books and on our database, we are really proud as Afrocentric.
Those are very, very good numbers. Professor, I'm going to bring you in here all the way from Cape Town. I mean, we've been speaking about availability, about access to a medication. I'm wondering, though, in terms of HIV medication, and I know whenever I'm interviewing the naked scientists, people always are like, when is there going to be a cure? So what are some of the recent breakthroughs when it comes to treatment for HIV?
Yes, so I'd like to take you back to the beginning 25 years ago when we started the program. And at that time, the major difficulty was the drugs were too expensive for all but the richest countries. And a lot of pressure was put to bear by civil society to drive the prices down. But once we managed to get the drugs affordable, the problem was that the drugs that were used were pretty toxic and people had quite a high pill burden to carry. So it was quite hard for people to stick to their tablets, stick to their therapy. And what's happened over the last 25 years is the treatment has become easier and much, much safer, also more effective. So we're now able to give people one tablet a day. The vast majority of people are just treated with one tablet, with very few people getting side effects, and most of the side effects are very mild and disappear with time. So that it makes it easier for them to adhere to their therapy, which means to take their therapy regularly. And if you do that, then the amount of virus that's circulating in your blood goes right down so that the labs can't find it anymore. And if that happens, there are two benefits. The one is you won't transmit the virus to your partner, or if you're pregnant, to your child. The second benefit is that you will live a life that is probably as long or almost as long as it would be if you didn't have HIV. So the journey has been one of gradual improvement, much better drugs, much better tolerability, smaller pills, and it's been a fantastic journey. From in the beginning in the 1990s, we were watching people shrink away and had no good treatment for them. We could patch up some of the diseases they had, but now we are able to effectively treat it, and it's turned into a chronic disease like diabetes or high blood pressure.
Professor, just on that, I find it so fascinating. The layperson would not think about something very key that you mentioned, is how easy it is to take medication, because it would be discouraging if somebody's sitting with 10 pills they have to take 3 times a day versus 1 pill once a day. How was that able to, or how was that research able to be found to say, okay, guys, let's consolidate this into 1 pill once a day, and then maybe also add for me, where would you like to see this go? Would you like it to eventually become a pill that's taken once a week, or what do you imagine that chronic management could look like in the future?
Okay, so in order for 1 pill to be made, we needed more potent drugs, because it doesn't help if you put something into 1 pill that's the size of a golf ball, because then nobody can
Now it's a fist pill. Yes.
So the drugs had to be very potent, so that only a small amount is required. So that was the most important advance that happened. You speak about using therapy less often than every day. And there is, in fact, such therapy. It's not yet available widely in this country, but there is now an option of getting an injection once every 2 months. There are some issues with it, and it's currently unaffordable, and it's early days. But that drug is now being used also to prevent HIV, something we call PrEP, which is pre-exposure prophylaxis, which means you're taking an HIV drug to protect yourself from getting HIV if you don't have it. So long-acting therapy is already here, and I'm sure in the future that will become easier and more affordable.
Where are we when it comes to clinical trials and tests and research for an actual cure?
Cure is very difficult. There's been an active cure program run by the National Institute for Health in the US for quite some time now, and it's proved to be exceptionally challenging. The trouble is this virus, once it gets into your body, it creates a copy of its genetic code and puts that copy inside your cell. And provided you are alive and those cells are alive, the copy will be sitting there. And to devise therapy that will go into the individual cells and destroy the genetic code of the virus, that's proved to be too difficult. I'm not saying it's never going to happen, but we have not made much progress there. When I say we, the research community hasn't. And we also haven't made much progress on a vaccine, which would be also a wonderful thing. So there's still a lot of work to be done, but huge strides have been made.
So I think now would be a very, very good time to bring to the conversation Tebogo Magwe, who is Executive Director for Human Capital and Transformation. Tebogo, I mean, you really have been working for a while in this space, and your colleagues have given a view of the organization and how the Afrocentric ecosystem really talks to each other in terms of CSI to HIV management, partnerships with government and medical schemes, and advancement in HIV treatment and all of that. And I want to, shift the conversation a little bit to talk about employees. And they are, of course, an important part of this community in this organization. How does Afrocentric as a group really support employees that are affected by HIV and AIDS without, of course, singling them out and making them vulnerable to their privacy being exposed if they don't want it to be?
Thank you very much. It's been said by my colleagues here, and you've just repeated the most important part, which is employees are very critical, and themselves, they are a community. For us to be able to do what Maria, my colleague, the MD of AFA, mentioned, we have to have employees, right, that would also understand the importance of providing care to those that are affected with HIV and AIDS for the program to be successful. So for that to happen, it starts with us being able to care for our own so that they transmit this care. It becomes part of what they do every day because they're getting it. So from an Afrocentric perspective, a lot of investment has gone into it. It starts with employees knowing the importance of being safe and their rights being protected, whether they're HIV positive or not, under the umbrella of the employee well-being, but also under the umbrella of harassment policies that we have and non-discrimination policies that we have, all linked to the Code of Good Practice. So from a policy development perspective, our employees are very much well protected or also very well nurtured to do what they do best in spite of their HIV status. Those who are the HIV positive, covered either by the scheme or by the primary health insurance, they do have access into engaging with the doctors, getting submitted or enrolled into the treatment program, getting to understand their CD4 cell count to be able to know what is the next step as far as their treatment is concerned. So beyond the policy development, there's also accessibility to care. And thirdly, it is very important for us to continue to talk about employee experience. What are they experiencing every day? If they tend to become HIV positive and they decide to come out, it is very safe for that to happen. And I want to bet that the reason why that is safe, despite of the policy, is because they understand better what the clients and the members that they're serving go through when the stigmatization happen, and therefore they can't do it to their own. And so that kind of culture of care, understanding the importance of taking care of your own, understanding that employees are a community on their own to be able to lead action of non-stigmatization and accessibility to care. It's what we're driving in this organization. I'm so proud to be part of that.
So what strategies would you share with other employers, that are watching, that they can implement within their own workforce with their employees? Because maybe they're not dealing in the specific space of HIV management, but they have individuals who are directly affected by HIV and AIDS.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I'm sure most companies have done a lot, but it's time to re-emphasize the things that are basic and also build on them. The first one, let's continue to share awareness. Let's continue to educate. Let's continue to train. There is not enough. You can't say, I've had it last year and therefore I'm okay. It's always a continuous journey that we should not deprive investment into it. And secondly, let's open up accessibility for care. We are very fortunate enough to have Maria heading up AFA, the passion that resumes or exudes out of that organization encourages people to be able to know that when you're HIV positive as an employee, even if you don't work for Afrocentric, there is a possibility that I can have access to care. As Dr. Gary Martins has also expressed, that this journey has been with us for more than 25 years now. And to be honest with you, registering, as Dr. Billy Mukale has said, I keep on calling him doctor, it just suits him.
He's a doctor, man.
Billy yeah, man, they deal with drugs, some are doctors, right? So it makes sense. But it's very important for us to also understand that beyond the corporate confinements, beyond the boundaries of corporate, there are government or institutions that are also encouraging third players like Billy, from a pharmacy direct perspective, to dispense medication, to encourage adherence to medication, to ensure that employees, in spite of where they are, or in spite of where their families are, because majority of us, the nuclear family is not people staying with you under the same roof only. It also involves people staying in our other areas where we are partnered with or we belong to as part of our community members or as part of our family. Once we understand that these programs from a corporate perspective exist, it will help us as an organization or as employees as employers to be able to partner with those organizations to give care to our employees and the people affected within HIV and AIDS within that community. So in a nutshell, I'm giving you just top 3 things. There's a lot that can be done. In addition to policy development, in addition to employee experience being increased, in addition to advocacy, there are 3 things. 1, let's continue educating, share the knowledge, share the development. I mean, Professor Martin has expressed what's going on in that industry from a research and development perspective. The second one is for us to understand that partnership is very key. If you take what Pharmacy Direct is doing and reaching out to communities which our employees belong to, in terms of medication and encouraging adherence to medication, it's very critical. And the third thing, let's just love our employees in spite of their status. Your policies or practices around nurturing, around caring, that you expect them to give to other employees and to give to customers, let us start within the family of the employment.
Billy, just so we all know, MD is for managing director, not medical doctor. But it's not too late. If you want to go 37 years, it's not too late. But I think just picking up on what has been said, I want to come back to you, Maria, because I think a very, very important part of any management or treatment of illness is mental health. And you touched on it briefly. Talk to me about what AFA is doing with regards to mental health, because we know that if your mind is not in the right place, you're not going to take the medication, you're not going to act responsibly, you're not going to follow up with your appointments. So why is it such a key part of treatment?
It is because, think about it, Relebohile. If you are mentally unstable, it has got a ripple effect on everything. Not only just about medicine adherence, and HIV about anything else. So it is important for us. We have an integrated management system that enable us to treat you as a person holistically. What does that mean? It means that you are a person first before you are HIV positive. You are a person first before you have got diabetes. So therefore, that person-centric or patient-centric approach allows us to understand that if we don't integrate with mental health and we treat your mental health, it's going to impact on you holistically from a quality of health point of view. So therefore, we do integrate with our mental health program because, as Gerald earlier on indicated, we run a med scheme, which is the biggest subsidiary within Afrocentric Health. They have got state-of-art mental program that when we see that one of our patients is either going through either depression, bipolar, or anxiety disorder, we have a referral program where they are looked after, they are referred to either a psychologist or a psychiatrist, and we follow them up. So in terms of provisioning, after we've referred you to a therapist, we then check with you and we check how you're doing, how did you find the treatment, how are you coping? And sometimes it's small little things like, it was just too much today. I couldn't go to work. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't even take my kids to school, and it caused such a panic. So it's about knowing that they have AFA. They have got these counselors that they contact when they dip, their mental status is down, and we are able to coordinate care for them on behalf of them, and we are able to call in all these other programs that they have within the med scheme space to be able to tap into that. So I earlier on alluded to the integration of care that we do in that space. It is important, I think, Relebogele, as we're looking at it from an AIDS point of view today, we need to understand that you are a person first before any condition. And we have adopted that approach within the AFA that says, if you have got adherence issues with HIV, you are highly likely going to have adherence issues with diabetes. So we have got this holistic approach that says we want to care for you as a person. And when you're a person, in our community, you'll be suffering from mental health. You'll be suffering from diabetes. You'll be suffering from all these other conditions. And therefore, it is critical that we have got that coordination of care. When we talk to your doctor, we need to alert them that, think about it, this person has got 1 tablet for HIV, have got 3 tablets for diabetes, have got 4 tablets for schizophrenia. It's practically impossible that they're going to adhere to all of them. So make sure that in your treatment, understand that this person has to be taken into consideration before you start prescribing all this medication. And our medical advisors, by the way, are there for that, specifically to make sure that they look at what the patients are receiving. They look at the drug interaction, which means if we give you this medicine for HIV, would it interact with any other of the drugs that you are taking? So it's that holistic approach that we are working on. But coming back to mental illness, I think post-COVID, we saw what it did. And we are all vulnerable to it. And as much as HIV has stigma, mental illness has stigma as well. So the two combined, it's like a volcano. And for us, we take special care, particularly for those that are HIV and have mental illness, and make sure that their care is integrated and taken care of.
I think I'm quite encouraged with what you're saying, because we know that also just being an adult, having children, being a parent, having work stress, the economy is not great. You don't even have to have any kind of mental illness diagnosis for it to be taken with the seriousness that it requires. And every day, like you say, is different. So it's so great that you mentioned that